Hello, everybody. This is Paula Harris. I'm so excited. I've been excited all week because I have a very good friend that I'm going to be having a conversation with today, and it's Dr. Lynne Kitei, and I've known her for years. In fact, when I was living in Italy, Dr. Lynne and her husband Frank came to visit me because I wanted the Italian audience to really experience this case of the Phoenix Lights. So we're personal friends, but you're going to get a lot of information of a situation that really did happen in Phoenix, Arizona, that had more implications than just a sighting. It was more than just a sighting. So when I think about the Phoenix Lights as a researcher, what I'm thinking about is okay, when you have these kinds of mass sightings over a huge area, over a huge city, or in the case of 1957, over a soccer stadium in Italy, where the Fiorentina soccer team was playing, in broad daylight, a UFO comes over the soccer stadium. It stops the game. Everybody looks up, and then this angel hair comes down, or what we call filament, glass filament comes down. And this happened in Italy. It was a mass sighting. It has an effect on the people in the stadium. It has an effect on the soccer team. It has an effect on the people of planet Earth. So when I was thinking about the Phoenix Lights, what I was thinking about is let's look at the effects, because it was some years ago that it's had then, and it had an effect on the government. I hope, Lynne, you mentioned Signington, and you mentioned Barwood, and you mentioned the politics of it, and it had effect on the regular people. So whatever happened covered a lot of ground. So I am so thrilled, and I'm so happy to have this conversation with Dr. Lynne Kitei. And for the people that are watching this in my Patreon or Facebook or whatever, that aren't familiar with the details, Dr. Lynne Kitei will fill you in on those too. So these kinds of events that really do happen, and you actually filmed it, so you have it. What does it do? What does it do to people of this planet?
Okay, well, firstly, for anyone that doesn't know, I'm a medical doctor. Did not want to come forward after thousands of people saw what I had been not only seeing, but also documenting on film. I'm the only one with 35 millimeter photographs that have been analyzed by military and university optical experts as true unknowns prior to, during, and after the mass sighting of March 13th, 1997. And to just get out of the way, if anybody doesn't know what happened on March 13th, 1997, because there is so much mis and disinformation out there, to set the record straight, and that's why I came forward, finally, after 7 years of anonymity, pushing my whole medical career aside to try to find a logical source and meaning for what I had witnessed in photographs, and I had yet to find it. Almost 3 decades later, and ended up with a 750-page journal of such incredibly credible data. I knew nothing about this topic. And still today, I don't know what they were, but I know that they were. And it's time we get this topic out in the open, address it, accept it, and study it, so we can find out not only who is driving these things, but also move forward in our own evolution. And to go back to March 13th, 1997, while thousands of people were purposely looking up at the sky for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet, they also got a glimpse of Mile, and according to Peter Davenport, who's a director of the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, from years and years, actually decades, of collecting data from thousands of people, he announced at the 20th anniversary of the mass sighting that one of these objects was 8 miles wide. Think about that one, okay? And we're not only talking about lights, orbs that people would see in various formations, whether it was a V formation or triangle formation or delta or boomerang, an actual craft. And again, there's so much disinformation out there. It wasn't just one or two events, as the media would pick up on. And I get it, the 8 to 10 hour period was when most people were outside looking up at the sky at the Hale-Bopp comet and saw what they saw and started reporting it. But the mass sighting itself actually began at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, daylight sightings in Arizona. 5 o'clock hour in New Mexico, Native Americans were reporting it. 7 o'clock hour and beyond in California. And the 11 o'clock hour, 10, 11 o'clock hour, there were two commercial airline pilots who called into radar. It took years for one of them to contact me and let me know about this. They actually saw one of these it was massive craft cover Las Vegas. And there's a story to that if we have time. And then the sightings continued until 5:30 the next morning. I was told by a head of a Boeing crew himself that as they were coming into work at 5:30 at Sky Harbor International Airport, one of these craft was actually hovering right over their tarmac. So we're talking about, number one, over a dozen hours. Number two, multiple things that people were seeing at the same time in multiple places, as well as, and 4 states at least. I am now, and we're going to talk about that because it's mind-boggling what we're finding in this Phoenix Lights experiencer study that I've been doing for over 2 years. If anybody's at the website, Phoenix Lights Network, I welcome you to get on there because we're going to be talking about some of the pictures and some of the craft illustrations. Just www.thephoenixlights.net or just Google Phoenix Lights Network. And if you can get on the photo page, my unique collection of 35 millimeter that again have been analyzed, authenticated by military and university optical experts is pretty mind-boggling in and of itself. But the findings of our study, and the study questionnaire is on the, if you go on the landing page, you'll see a triangle, and right underneath you can enter the website or take, I know that some of our viewers now have actually seen things, and we'd love you to take our questionnaire. We're still collecting, although we're finishing it up. It's right underneath where you enter, and it's a very short, totally anonymous, totally we want people to be honest, and people are telling us things you wouldn't believe. I'll get into that a little bit. But at any rate, there is so much more to this story. We're finding out that also there were other states that people were seeing these things. We have over 1,200 people worldwide who have seen similar phenomena, either these orbs and rock solid formation or these massive craft. And we're talking actual craft. If you go to the GAP page, GAP, Geospatial Animation Project, on the Phoenix Lights Network website, you'll see beautiful illustrations by Larry Lowe, who's no longer with us. After hundreds of reports were collected, a 12-year study, 2 or more people had to see the same craft to be in the study. And it was concluded that there were 10 different craft. Now, if you look at them, they do look different and they have different numbers of lights. Whether it was one craft that could morph into looking different, or the perspective from where the person was standing, or a parade. And that's what they ultimately concluded, and rightly so, because there were so many things happening at the same time over a dozen hours in multiple states. So, that's number one. Okay, to set the record straight, it wasn't just 1 or 2 events. It was many events over many hours, and not just in Arizona. Now, if you go a step further, and there's so much to the story, if we want to get into the story itself and how there was no investigation, no explanation, and months later, a councilwoman tried to ask questions, and she was just plastered by the media. There was so much not only disinformation, but discrediting of people. It was awful. And then you go a little bit longer, and actually June 18th, and this is important to know, a front page USA Today article opened our sighting to international scrutiny. We were deluged by media overnight. It went viral, and we didn't even have social media in the day. We were deluged by media asking because the witnesses, and that's one of the things we want to talk about, is how it affected the witnesses in real time and long term, were so detailed and so heartfelt that they too were asking, why isn't there an investigation? Why isn't there explanation? The very next day, our former Governor Symington called a press conference to reveal the culprit of the lights over Phoenix, and he comes marching out, one of his aides in a giant alien head costume, and made a mockery of it, which it was not a joke, particularly with parents or with their children that saw something 2 or 3 malls wide, and he's making a joke out of it. Well, it wasn't until a month later, and I called around because I was just as curious. I mean, I saw it up close and personal, by the way, 2 years before the mass sighting. And we're talking about these orbs, and I'll get back to this, in rock solid pyramid formation right outside our bedroom window. Both my husband, who's also a physician and healthy skeptic, as I am, saw the same thing at the same time. And I also got pictures of it cloaking right in front of us. And I hope we'll have time to get back to that, because that's really important, because Navy optical physicist Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who just passed recently as well, analyzed my pictures and came up with a stunning conclusion. But anyway, just fast forwarding, I mean, there's so much to tell about this story, but I called every military base after Symington pulled his little press conference to find out what they knew, and they were just as curious as we were. They wanted to meet with me, which I did not want any part of the military. And I get a call a month later from one of the PR heads of the Air National Guard. He says, "Oh, Dr. Lynne, I think we know what those lights were back in March." And I was thrilled. I was looking for any logical explanation. She says, "Do you believe in all these months, no one ever looked at the log for visiting Air National Guard, and the Maryland Air National Guard was in town sending off flares in Operation Snowbird," which here you think snowbirds are people coming in from all over the country for the winter. Actually, in military terms, I learned it means diversionary tactical maneuvers. So they might have, been sending off flares, but that certainly isn't what thousands and thousands, over at least 10,000 people saw. At any rate, I said, "Now, wait a minute, when were they in town?" And she says, "March 1st to the 15th. Now, I also had photographed the same exact mile-wide phenomena in the same exact location at a distance, which are also in the pictures from 95, by the way. They were there in 95. 2 months before the mass sighting. If you go to the photo page, you'll see this really unique collection head on, turning into a V shape. The second picture is a smoking gun of 5 lights in a V with 2 underneath, and thousands of people would describe 2 months later during the mass sighting as 5 lights in a V formation with 2 trailing lights. This was 2 months before, and it was so massive, and it seemed to turn. And the next morning I called around and found air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor International Airport. So the same thing at the same time, and they were very forthcoming initially and said this appeared over Class B restricted airspace, over the tarmac, okay? And one of them was a meteorologist and said the entire thing turned, this mile-wide formation of equidistant lights against the wind, and then elevated slowly and moved in synchrony, as he put it, behind South Mountain. And I said, "So what was it?" And there was silence. And he said, "Beats me." I said, "You're air traffic controllers. You're supposed to know what's in our airspace." He said that there was a group that saw this, rolled out every conventional aircraft, balloons, Chinese lanterns, flares, even skydivers with lights. They rolled out everything, the possibility. We kept on, in contact up until and including March 13th. I called them the next morning because it seemed like the same exact phenomena. I caught the endpoints of a giant V or triangle, and in the same exact spot. And they confirmed that it was. They even said that there were a couple pilots that called in, a commercial airline pilot that said, "What the hell are these lights over me?" And that's right over the tarmac. And a private pilot, and I'm going to fast forward, who came forward in 2017, who was Kurt Russell, the actor who was on Close Approach to Sky Harbor, who was reporting it while I was filming it. At any rate, I said to the PR person from the Air National Guard. Now, wait a minute. When was the Air National Guard in town? Berlin Air National Guard. She says March 1st to the 15th. I said, were they in town in January? She said, oh, no. And I said, well, my husband and I saw the same exact thing in the same exact spot. I even got pictures of it, and it was confirmed the next morning, both in January and the morning after March 13th, by air traffic controllers is appearing over Class B restricted airspace. And she says, you never told me that. And I said, besides, you're trying to tell me that flares, and by then I had educated myself, that drift and drop with the wind on a parachute from an aircraft have huge smoke trails that are illuminated by the flare itself and are supposed to illuminate the area, traverse the entire state in a mile-wide, equidistantly spaced V formation for hours. And she says, I have a call coming in. I'll get back to you. Well, I'm still waiting for that. Anyway, to fast forward again, finally, I mean, it was unbelievable. The next day, they came out with Phoenix lights or flares. Well, 3 years later, they tried to reenact it. Now, I'm leaving a lot out here. I very intricately documented in my book. But 3 Air National Guards came in town. The existence of Councilwoman Frances Barwood, who was running for Secretary of State, to reenact it, and it was a joke. If you go to the news page, there's a little square there that says AZ family, and you'll see they tried to make a triangle. It was upside down. It fell apart immediately. It had huge smoke trails. So, I mean, to date, the Phoenix lights have never been created or explained, and yet they're appearing worldwide. I mean, we found out from our study, people are seeing very similar phenomena worldwide, and it's affecting people at a very deep level. Now, I will get into this. In real time, and it's important to say this, there has not been one credible report that I'm aware of, and it's almost 30 years, it's 28 years in March, of harm, threat, or abduction, or missing persons that one movie did, associated with the Phoenix Lights phenomena. Can't speak about other things that might be out there, but I can about the Phoenix Lights. And our study is really confirming that. In real time, people were in awe and in wonder, curious. So many cars pulled over. I still have people getting in touch with me to say that they feel blessed to have had the experience. That's how it affected them at such a really deep, profound level. Some people had telepathic messages. I mean, it's mind-boggling when you really look at the whole picture. And long term, people went into the peace movement, went into the environmental movement. I mean, it really, really touched people at a very, very deep level. In addition, there were a number of people, and I must have interviewed hundreds of people by now, but there were a number of witnesses that reported that they had had near-death experiences as children that was reawakened by the mass sighting. And that really touched me deeply because I did too. And I lay my near-death experience out there at 8 years old. You know, we're talking about 70 years ago now, in the book. If we have time, I'll get into that because it's very, very profound. And also our study is showing that people that have had unexplained experiences are more open to other experiences. I'll get into that. But on the other side, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, this isn't about me. This is about the data. And I thought, could there possibly be a connection between all unexplained phenomena, whether it's near-death experience, out-of-body experience, unexplained aerial phenomena that have a mystical light associated with the experience? And lo and behold, when I started looking, I started finding such credible data at university level. The Omega Project by Dr. Kenneth Rink. In fact, I have a little, if I can even read it. It's about this thick, and I lay it out very simply in the book. Actually, Kenneth Ring said interpreted this experience, such as UFO encounters or NDEs, near-death experiences, as triggering a lowered threshold for other paranormal experiences. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. But the point is, at university level, I was finding that others, and Dr. John Mack at Harvard, were actually finding a connection between all unexplained phenomena, not only in the experience itself. And I lay it out again very simply in the book, very similar, no matter what the unexplained phenomena experience is. But what was most profound was the after effect, the awakening, the enlightenment that someone feels so profoundly and so deeply that it changes one forever. I mean, I kept on seeing positive after effects, and our study is proving that, by the way, that I started calling all unexplained phenomena UP and up, because it isn't up, because people feel a connectiveness to the universe and to the earth and to each other that they may never have felt before in their entire life. And in the study, if I could get to that a little bit, just to some other findings that are really riveting, is that 80% of people that had the experience with the Phoenix Lights or something similar to it had a slight or strong sense of awe or fascination. 54% had positive effects on changing their life. And I can get into that as well. 40% agreed that there was a strong bond or sense of connection to these phenomena, whether it was the craft itself. And we have a couple that was out in Carefree that had they were realtors and that had stakes in the ground, and estimated that what they were looking at was a craft that was over 2 miles wide. And they saw gunmetal bottom, windows, and beings at the windows looking down at them as intently as they were looking at the beings. And some of the other things that were really fascinating from this study is that close to 50%, which I was blown away. Okay, now I know myself that since my near-death experience and certainly the Phoenix Lights itself, I have felt a connection to these phenomena. But we're talking close to 50% of people that have had the experience have seen or interacted with non-human intelligent beings, such as extraterrestrials, ghosts, spirits, and light beings. I mean, they really feel a connection and a communication. And had a lot of them, we're talking at least a third, have also had near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences. And they have, this what got me. Okay, you ready? At least 13% and even more, okay, actually were taken aboard a craft, a UFO craft. I had no idea that people were actually being taken aboard a craft and have conscious memory of it. It wasn't like they were under hypnosis or uh, sleep paralysis or any of that. So we're talking consciousness that is really being expanded with people that have had the experience with the Phoenix Lights specifically. Again, I can't talk about other things, but with these orbs, and many people feel that there's it's not either a being or an essence in these orbs that they're communicating with. And again, we had people during the mass sighting that had telepathic messages not to worry, that they weren't here to harm them. And again, besides the awe and the wonder, there was a calmness that came over. Let me tell you this: 6 months before the mass sighting, the movie Independence Day was very popular, and we're so inundated with threat, harm that, actually, Dr. Gary Schwartz, who's the head of the Conscious Study Department at the University of Arizona, he's in our documentary. If you want to take a peek at that, I think it's free on Tubi and it's also on Amazon. This is the cover of it, the 20th actually anniversary. We keep evolving the book and the documentary. But at any rate, he makes a very poignant statement that if you're inundated with fearing something, how do you think you're going to react if you see that something, right? So kids who had seen Independence Day were jumping up and down, Independence Day, Independence Day. But as it got closer, a calmness came over everyone, children and adults alike, a connectiveness to the phenomena that when it passed, they wanted to chase after it or have their parents get in the car and follow it. So, in real time and long term, we're talking a jolt to the system. And yes, there were some people, we call it ontological shock because of religion or because they're so set in their reality cube that they just can't deal. Yes, there are, a number of people, a small number of people that have that experience. But again, nobody was scared. Nobody was fearful. Nobody was harmed. Nobody was threatened. So that's really important to say here. And if anything, it raised everyone's consciousness that really experienced the Phoenix Lights. And I know there's probably some questions out there, but before we get to some, unless Paul, unless you want to have questions now, and then I'll get into Dr. I have to tell you, I think that your audience might enjoy learning about Dr. Bruce Maccabee's analysis of the close sighting pictures and his riveting conclusion. It's up to you. Do you want me to go into that or?
Oh, we can't have questions until the end, but it's so interesting because the idea that we are in difficult times right now and that there was a sense of calmness and that what's coming out of the government right now, even the name of the book, imminent, is coming out, the Elizondo book, it makes it look like an imminent threat. And yet you can have this thing coming in 1997 with a sense of calmness. If they were going to do something, they would have done it then. So it's very.
I said that. I said that way back then, the first interview I did. And I really stayed anonymous to tell you, but the first interview I did, they asked, do you think, they'll come back or if they're a danger? And I said, if they wanted to do something to us, they could have a long time ago. They're obviously a lot more, advanced than we are. I don't know, spiritually advanced, but certainly it's waking people up. And that's the other thing. When you look at the different whether it's near-death experience, people are coming back with the same feelings of urgency to share the experience. And I knew myself. I mean, I am an experiencer. I mean, I've tried to be as scientific as I can with the data. As a physician, I wanted people to know they're not alone. Okay, even though most anomalies can be explained, only a small percentage cannot. But just because we can definitively define what these things are, yet it doesn't mean they're not real. We may just be looking on the AM dial for an FM frequency. So it was important that I let people know that, hey, when somebody has a paranormal experience, it's real to them. And as a physician, as an experiencer, I know how that feels. And if you don't share it, it festers. It's not healthy. Even sharing with one person, and I always ask people on Facebook or whatever, I take confidentiality as a physician very, very seriously. But just sharing with one person is cathartic. It's healing. So, I mean, it's really important to say that. And one of the things that I did not share in the first book was if you watch the documentary, you will see that there was a sighting that appeared a year after the mass sighting, which was pretty amazing, through a thick fog. And we don't have fog in Phoenix. Okay, anybody that lives in Phoenix or Tucson knows that the humidity is very low. It is very, very rare to have fog. And we had such a sheet of fog, you couldn't even see beyond our street. And my husband even jokingly said they could be there watching. But at any rate, I had not seen the Phoenix Lights for that whole year after the mass sighting. And I have to say that I did look out one wall of our bedroom as a window, and we're pretty high on a mountain in Paradise Valley. So we have a panoramic view, and anything that pops up out there, lights or a fire or a haboob, the dust storms that come just come right across the city, we get to see. And we really enjoy the view. And I was also, of course, looking for these lights again and didn't see anything remotely close to these lights. And by then I had gone down, I really went to great lengths to have my data explained to me by scientists. And I met with the head of the optical sciences department at the University of Arizona, who took great interest in my data. He had worked with Star Wars with Reagan, as well as the Brooks Institute of Photography, the dean of students, and a whole host of other people that were analyzing my data and authenticating it. And I was trying to find out what the heck it was. But in the meantime, suddenly, through the fog, my husband and I were out on the balcony, and I see, this is January of '98. I see two lights like muted in the distance. And I thought, whoa, they were amber, which is the color that we saw the close sighting, which I want to get to in a sec. And I thought, whoa, could they be them, right? So the next morning I called Dr. Richard Powell, the head of the optical science department at U of A, and he became vice president of research and is in our documentary, by the way, to ask him what I should get, because I was using a cheap Instamatic camera. I can't believe that the close sighting pictures really turned out. And he instructed me, and I went out and I got a top of the line Pentax camera with a telelens and star filter. And the next night they came back, I got unbelievable pictures. I alerted Village Labs, which was a clearinghouse, a computer lab here for most of the local reports, and that I had been seeing them to alert the other videographers from March 13th. There were only a handful of us. And I have to say, my video and another video were before 10 o'clock. The two boomerang videos, which had become under fire for being flares, were after 10 o'clock when they supposedly sent off flares. At any rate, they were all ready. And in the documentary, we show footage of straight lines. I mean, this is like 40 miles wide, a 20-minute array of straight lines and mirror images. And the final thing was a giant pyramid in the same spot. Again, and I'm going to, hopefully I have time to get into two stories about where they were located. But at any rate, now I had 4 videos taken at the same exact time, because on March 13th, I had hired a geology professor to triangulate the 4 videos at that time. And he first went to the fellow who shot the boomerang after 10 o'clock. Then he came to my house, and my video is with 3 endpoints of a giant V or triangle. And he said, wait a minute, when did you shoot yours? I said, before 10 o'clock. He said, well, wait a minute, this could be very different objects at different times. And he said, I can't triangulate. And he walked out in a huff. But now, a year later, I had 4 videos. Now, go back to 1995. You want me to get in? I will get into that. I think you guys would enjoy it. Again, without any interest or knowledge in this topic at all. It happened to be, and I don't believe in coincidence any longer, an anonymous gift from beyond, okay? It was the eve of my birthday, and I was in an adjacent room taking a leisurely bath. My husband was standing at our big picture window in our bedroom, talking to my mother-in-law, who had called from Philadelphia, where we were born and raised, to wish me a happy birthday, and nothing ever ruffled his feathers. I know PAOLA'S, he was head of several hospital boards and state boards and so forth. He sounded alarmed. He says, get over here quick. What the hell is that? And I grabbed a towel, wringing wet, run over to the window, and a little below us, and we're in a gated area, nestled in a mountain range, no-fly zone, okay? But a little below us, over a very treacherous desert landscape, was 3 amber orbs, one on top and 2 closely aligned underneath. And it was like, whoa, what is that? And I thought I should get my video camera, and I'm sure there are people out there that have had experiences like this. You don't know how long it's going to last. So I tried to take everything in mentally. I really recommend taking a mental moment when you have these moments. The size, the shape, the color. They were about 3 to 6 feet each, depending on how close they were. They were oval shape, which is interesting. And I've said that from day one, like an egg on its side. That's what I would describe it. They were oval shaped. And the Nimitz Navy pilots that have come forward with the Tic Tac video talk about their UFO being oval shaped. So I don't know if they're connected at all, but they were oval shaped and a uniform amber color throughout. Didn't glare at all. Every other light out there glared. And I thought to myself, okay, if I don't get a picture of this, no one's going to believe it. And I go running to the closet to grab my cheap Canon Instamatic camera that I keep handy for our beautiful sunsets here in Arizona. And my husband called me back. He says, get over here quick. One of them is disappearing. The top orb, which out budging, and I always go back to this sighting because it's as clear in my head as I'm talking to you now, started to shrink very, very slowly, mechanically, almost like a dimmer switch, as if there was an intelligence behind it. And it got smaller and smaller and smaller till it was pea size and this then disappeared, the top orb. But it still felt like it was there. Where did it go? I jumped out on the balcony. We have a sliding glass door perpendicular to the big window and got a picture of the two lower orbs. And if you go onto the Phoenix Lights Network photo page, you'll see those two lower orbs. You'll see the topography first, and I'm going to get back to that picture in a minute. But the two lower orbs, and I'm on the balcony, my husband's inside, and immediately notice an eerie silence as if time had stopped. It was just bizarre. And as intently as I was watching these two lower orbs, and I didn't share this with a soul until 2 years later, and it took a long time to share it with anyone, especially in interviews. I'm just starting to share it. It felt like something was watching me. And going through my mind, I was thinking, who are you? What are you? Do you know that I'm here? I'd love to meet you. The next thing I remember, the left bottom orb started to shrink and something told me to take a picture and I quickly snapped a picture of that. That was the only picture that turned out at the time. But for me, it was confirmation. I mean, you can see right there, there's one orb half disappeared and one still there. But I didn't even know who to show it to. I knew no one who was into the topic. I knew nothing about this topic. And I wondered for 2 years what this close sighting was. Well, now fast forward to a year after the mass sighting. As an afterthought, I sent Dr. Bruce Maccabee the first and the last picture from 95. And I just said, please tell me what those orbs were that were close, right? Well, he calls me up a couple weeks later. He says, you know, you mentioned that that close sighting in 95 was only a couple minutes long. I said, right. He said, ask your husband. I said, he won't talk about it, which is interesting. Everyone comes from a different background, from a different upbringing. Some people can't deal with this topic. Some people don't want to, and that's okay. Everyone in their own time. But he said, you've got to corroborate with him how long it was. So I sat him down. I said, look, we don't have to talk about the close sighting. How long do you remember it being in 95? He said, I don't know. 2, 3, 4 minutes tops. I go back to Dr. Maccabee. He says, that's impossible. I said, what do you mean? And if you look at those pictures, now this is really riveting. He was the first one to notice that the same exact phenomena in a line was in the same exact location at a distance, disappearing as the closed doors were disappearing, as I would film 2 months before the mass sighting, during the mass sighting, and after the mass sighting. There's additional pictures. And he was the first one to notice that. I just thought it was part of the landscape. What did I know? He said also, if you really study the pictures, the close two orbs moved from the left side of these skylights that are down the street in a house to the right side. So they moved. He said, but the most dramatic thing that he saw was if you look at the skyline, there are many lights out. We're talking groups of lights out in the first picture. I'm sorry, that are on in the first picture, that are off in the last picture. He says, that doesn't happen in a couple of minutes. He says, I want you to do an experiment. He says, go out on the balcony, take a picture of the sun of the skyline, and keep in mind this is 3 years later after 95. One night every hour, the next night every half hour, and I also did another night every 15 minutes to see when these groups of lights would go out. Well, I usually take a bath between 7 and 8 when we're home. So let's be conservative and say the starting point is 8 o'clock. the groups of lights started going out at 9 o'clock, and the last picture was indicative of 10:30, 11 o'clock. And he said to me, can I please present this case at the upcoming MUFON International Symposium in Washington, D.C.? And I said, look, Dr. McAbee, this is your baby. I would have never noticed this data. Just keep my name out of it, which I was so grateful. There were only a handful of people that knew what I had, but he did not divulge my name, but he presented it in 1999, and it took me until 2010, the second edition of the book, it's in its fourth edition now, to share that he presented it as the first, and as far as we know, the only authenticated photographic evidence of missing time. Now, I'm going to just leave you with that one. Okay, so that's a little interesting aside. And his whole 21-page report, if you care to read it, is on the website, the Phoenix Lights Network website. Now, so did something happen then? What I told you is what I remember. So we'll leave it at that. But I'm going to go back to the first picture that's on the Phoenix Lights Network photo page, which is the topography. If you look from our vantage point, you will see, and I put a car on the road, and the lights reflect onto the road, because I wanted to show that it's very different from the true unknowns. The true unknowns do not reflect any light. They're self-contained. There's also skylights, like a group of skylights to the right of that car of the road. And if you look straight up from those skylights, you'll see South Mountain on the left side, and a few miles back are the Estrella Mountain Range. Now, another little coincidence. 6 months before the mass sighting, I was invited to present my substance abuse prevention education program. It's ironic that I have dedicated my life's work since 1976, when I started doing health reporting for NBC in Philadelphia, to the dissemination of vital health issues for the community, and started a company in '85, health education learning programs, to get curriculum into the classroom to wake kids up to the reality of AIDS and teen pregnancy and substance abuse prevention education programs. And I was presenting my substance prevention program at the Gila Bend, Gila, Gila Bend Indian Reservation, which is right in between South Mountain and the Estrella Mountain Range. There's a basin, very sacred ground. And after the mass sighting, and in science we look for repeatability, I kept noting that these phenomena kept popping up. And again, just look at the data, it speaks for itself, right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. So I called up the principal and I said, did you happen to see strange lights on March 13th? And he started to giggle. And I said, is that funny? And he said, are you kidding? We've been looking up at them for centuries. We call them sky people, light beings. I had no idea. Not only were they looking up at them on March 13th, 1997, during the mass sighting, but he says to me, that's how the Estrellas got its name. It means star in Spanish. In fact, gateway to the stars. And there's petroglyphs, these drawings, and etched out in the mountains there, that depict some of the things that we're seeing. And they believe that there's a portal or gateway in that area. And they are very open to it. I had no idea. And talk about consciousness. I mean, they not only, of course, are very open to being one with the earth and to the universe, but they believe that these orbs, many of them, and the Hopi have protocols to invite them in. The day before our mass sighting up at the Navajo Range, and I actually work with a couple of Navajo Rangers who shared with me the day before our mass sighting, they had a big sighting up there, and they're very open to these things. And these orbs were going around in circles, and then clockwise, and then counterclockwise for over an hour. And the whole town of Loop brought out their lawn chairs to watch this going on. I mean, it's amazing when you really find out, as far as the native cultures, indigenous cultures worldwide are very open to these other intelligences. And what he started telling me is that many believe that these orbs are spirit world or ancestors coming to give them guidance and comfort and knowledge and inspiration. And I have to admit, I would have never picked this topic, but I've certainly been inspired to do what I've been doing for the last 3 decades. So, you know, I, for one, am an example how these phenomena can really change your life and touch one person at a time. And I hope as these Phoenix Lights are touching one person at a time, I've touched you guys here today, one person at a time, and maybe you've opened the door. And that's why I finally shared the missing time in my second edition of the book in 2010, because maybe our concept of time is primitive. Past, present, and future is primitive. Maybe that's not what time really is. And if there is other spaces and times along with ours, then why is it such a leap to think that there could be other intelligent, sentient entities in these other times and spaces that we get glimpses of if we're open to them or invited? So I invite you not only to watch the documentary, but this is the latest edition of my book, The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone. I keep adding chapters. They wanted me to write a new book when the governor, by the way, after the 10th anniversary, came forward finally after he mocked the sighting in 97 to say that he saw one of these craft. And in his own word, which is a word that's been coined by other countries worldwide that are much more open to these phenomena. He said that what he saw the craft, was otherworldly. And the other thing that I'm very proud, and if you have kids or grandkids, this is a graphic novel, activities coloring book. All these are on Amazon, called Phoenix Lights, UFOs, and Crop Circles, activities coloring book, The Adventures of Sue FO, Field Observer, and UFO. He's a little alien. And it is packed. I mean, it is an amazing, amazing book. Not only the 10 craft to color, we go over the science and the history. We have iconic pictures, as well as 80 crop circles, and I picked the most ornate to color as well. And then we have activities. We have word finders and all kinds of really fun activities for all ages. And finally, we have the answers as well for those that are challenged. So, and I always say, let me find it for you. I always say, and now you know that it's a double entendre. If you can see this, keep looking up. There you go.
Oh, well, I'm so inspired. Actually, they chose you. I mean, you're perfect. You were chosen to do this. You were,
No, I had the choice. My husband chose not to do anything with it. I chose to investigate it and do what I'm doing. So everybody has a choice.
yeah, but you were already in public service, and that just really, really, as an investigator, I'm looking at the kinds of people that will change this thinking, the kinds of people that will raise consciousness. And I had asked you, and I love it to talk about the coloring book because we've had long conversations about going to the young people and how important young people are in this field. Could you end this wonderful, wonderful presentation with talking about the importance of young people?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's our future, right? And young people today also are much more open to the possibilities, the wondrous possibilities of the universe. And that was one of the reasons I'm actually was working on a curriculum. I've been working on a curriculum for over 10 years. And for the 25th anniversary, I wanted to get something out there for all ages so that parents and grandparents can do it with their kids, as well as teachers can do it in the classroom. And I have teachers. We have the color book, and we also have the black and white. They're both on Amazon. And I have teachers that are actually using it in the classroom because it's very difficult to get it into the curriculum, especially today. But yes, I mean, young people are much more open to the possibilities, and they soak this in. I mean, I have, besides my own grandchildren loving it, my niece, I mean, she would not let it out of her hand for weeks. I mean, she would take it to school with her. She would show it to everybody. She still does, actually, and she's in high school now. So, yeah. So, it's really important that we educate. I mean, education to me, I've always said it, even when I was doing my other programs called uh, You Make It. I believe every kid can make it if they're given the tools and they have one person that cares. And if one person cares and gets this activities coloring book and does it with them, whether it's a teacher or a parent or grandparent, and introduce them to the topic, because this is packed. There is nothing like this out there. I mean, not only does it have the Phoenix Light story, but again, it has iconic pictures. I have pictures of not only the 53 flyby of the Capitol building in Washington D.C. I have a picture of Foo Fighters, which are, I mean, we could go on for hours talking about the history of these phenomena, but during World War II. And in the documentary, by the way, in the bonus features, if you get the DVD, and you can only get the DVD through our website, by the way, now they don't make DVDs anymore on Amazon or elsewhere, but in the bonus features, we have a 93-year young French pilot who in World War II actually had these same phenomena, these orbs in rock solid formation around his aircraft. And when he went to share it with his higher ups, he got in a lot of trouble. I mean, his story itself is very interesting. And as you said, I mean, unfortunately, when the military and the government pick this topic up, a lot of times you hear it's a threat, threat, threat. And that was one of the reasons I came forward, because it's so important for people to know what happened here. And on March 13th, 1997, and the Phoenix Lights phenomena themselves that are appearing worldwide. And our study is proving it. We'll be coming out with the all the findings soon. We're getting that all together now. We're in the finishing stages, but just confirming what I had learned in the book. Half the book is about the connection between all unexplained phenomena and a lot more. I mean, there is so much more to this story, but yes, children really soak this up, and it's really important to get the information out there in a credible and professional, fun way. And that's what I tried to do with the activities coloring book graphic novel.
Thank you so much. I mean, for me, it's so important to have the real people, the source, the people that inspire other people. And you're a good friend and you inspire me. So thank you so much for this conversation.
Well, you inspire me too, Paula, with all the work that you've done and all the research you've done, and I feel honored being here today with everyone. I mean, it's just now that I finally came forward, it's really important to get the facts out there. The data speaks for itself, and I hope people do look at the website. I mean, it is packed with information that to consider and explore. So I hope that you'll check that out as well. And there's some really amazing clips. I just did a couple of History Channel programs, one with William Shatner and one with Lawrence Fishburne, and there's little clips there and some other fun clips on the homepage and the news page, and it's packed with fun and information. So enjoy.
Thank you so much.